अरे
ये भाई का 1 मिनट में दे दे।
अब नहीं आप क्यों तकलीफ उठाते हैं? He's leaving tomorrow morning.
So,
Trying to get all these little things done.
You will have coffee before you.
Before I go, yes, because you forced me to.
Yes, as you did that day.
That's right.
या भी जैसे नाच मार दो ना।
Whenever the light's on now in this recording, but and I mainly want it for their sound because this is I have a small one, but the sound is not very good on it, and this has very good sound.
The light is there.
Yes, so it's on now. We have there's plenty of time now. I was interested in your story of your mother and Papa. Could you tell that again? How Papa got his name? I'm sure you've told it so many times. It's easy for you to do.
Highly subjective question. There's so much to tell. I don't know where to.
I had never heard before, for instance, that Papa would go to her school and pick her up.
Yes.
Even though he had business duties, he was a
सिल्वर
businessman.
जुबली में हमें का है ने पोएम फॉर
Yes.
पापा वो मैं कल कबोर्ड साफ किया ने वो देखी पढ़ी।
I'll start from the end.
Okay.
When you are ready, you tell me.
Yes, I'm ready now. Go ahead.
Yes.
1 minute.
Yes. You happen to take notes of Mataji's talks and all that.
No.
And, I
But you
tell-
did it longhand. Could you do it?
Longhand. For example, letter, we don't say letter, we just write L.
I see.
Or
Yes.
Nehru, we just write N, like that.
I see.
We develop our
I
own
see.
shorthand.
Yeah.
One of the newspapers in Bombay, rather late in the day, enforced the rule that all the reporters should learn shorthand. Now, once they are in the run to learn shorthand means, from that day onwards, the local the city reports, where it seems inordinately delayed. Till 11 o'clock, 11:30, the reporters would be poring over the notes, trying to decipher what they have written. Because it was all shorthand, they couldn't read it themselves.
But they were the only ones who
And
did it.
all the paper was invariably late. Then the editor shouted, he says, enough of this nonsense. From tomorrow, no shorthand. You follow your own longhand. But now, for recruitment, it is compulsory.
Yes.
You should have knowledge of shorthand.
But standardized shorthand, so anyone can read it. No, is it still pretty much personal shorthand?
Yes.
I see. I thought there is a standardized though, isn't there? A
So now,
standard?
of course, standardized Pittman's or Greg's shorthand. But in the
No.
time when I was serving, at that time it was not at all compulsory because we developed our own shorthand. Because when it was a person like Prime Minister Nehru or Krishna Menon, they speak very fast, especially Krishna Menon. 200 words per minute.
Is that right?
At the speed.
And mostly, is that Hindi that he speaks? Mostly?
English.
English.
Oh, in
English. And where Nehru was concerned, he used to speak in Hindi. So simultaneously you have to take down in English.
Oh no.
Or some other leader would talk in Marathi or some other language and you have to translate it into.
Well, think of the United Nations too, what they had. Those are
I know. But
really
they have a
talented people.
simultaneous translation
Yes.
facilities.
Yeah.
Even in Parliament they have got. Parliament members speak in 14 languages. But they have got simultaneous translation. Even those people who would want to know what the members spoke in Hindi, they are conveyed in Hindi.
Isn't that amazing?
Now I'll talk about Papa.
Okay.
On October 18th,
On
1952, after about a year and a half of suffering from TB, my mother expired. And the news was conveyed to Papa from Bombay by telegram. Papa was at that time, in the afternoons, Papa used to read to Mataji and other ashram maharishi, mainly ladies and a few gents were there, from Tulsidas Ramayana in those days. So that's one of the big scriptures. So that is a Hindi. So Papa used to read it and translate it into our language, Konkani. So the Mataji was. So even the reading was going on. the telegram was handed in that Rame has expired. I took the name, pet name which my mother had in the days before Papa took sannyas. So Papa just announced, the telegram has come, Rame has died. As soon as she heard it, Mataji burst into tears. Because they were very closely associated with each other. And there was a time when both were doing intense sadhana together. And there was, in fact, Mataji was telling me, there was a time when she first came to Papa. She took inspiration from my mother. She would endlessly ply with questions about Papa, what he used to talk, what he used to do and everything. But there was no limit to what she could learn about Papa. And she used to join mother in whatever services she was rendering, because Papa's ashram, that was in a town nearby called Kasarkot. So they were very close. And so when the news came that mother has expired, Mataji burst into tears. And seeing Mataji cry, all the other ladies there also started shedding tears. Then Papa said, today's reading is over. No reading. Now, there was one American present. He came to know late in the evening, but this happened at about 4 o'clock. Papa has received a telegram. That is, Purvashram daughter has expired. So he decided to test Papa, whether he is affected or not. How far is his renunciation perfect? So for 2 days, he followed Papa, tracked him down. Wherever Papa went, all the time watching Papa. Whether by the slightest change in his usual jovial nature, whether he manifested any kind of sorrow over his daughter's passing. But he found Papa as jovial as ever, as joking with the devotees, moving about freely, as if nothing has happened. And at the end of the second day, I mean, all this he wrote, that book is there in the ashram library, about his meeting with all Indian yogis and saints. At the end of the article he writes, then he had to admit defeat. He said, at last I realized I have met the perfect yogi. That's how he called Papa, the perfect yogi. Says that he was completely unmoved.
Dispassion to
Mataji is
perfection.
now, Mataji has also attained perfection.
Yes.
But why did she show such emotion? That was because she felt so much for a person who was also a great devotee of Papa and who had now gone beyond.
Mother Hamilton was that way too.
Yes.
She was emotional, especially with loss.
And there was a time where he said, my father's old cottage in Kasarkot, it's 15 miles from here, it is still standing as it was 70 years back. When on the ground there, Mataji and mother used to go up and down for hours singing or chanting Ram Nam. And Mataji had developed a special tune of singing Ram Nam.
I've heard. Is it the one on tape? No.
It's not on tape.
But I love that
Whatever
one.
is on tape is Mataji's singing, because there are 2 tunes. One is Papa's tune, one is
Yes.
Mataji's tune.
Yeah.
So whatever Mataji singing is in Papa's tune. That we sing in the mornings here, you can hear that slow tune.
I love that one.
About that also there is a story, I'll just digress a little. Some years back, an American heart specialist came here. That, every Indian tune has got a name, called what we call raga. Now Papa's tune of Ram Nam, singing Ram Nam, Papa never bothered about the raga or anything, but Papa developed that tune himself during his sadhana period. That is, I believe, called Saubya Rag. That is very soft tune. Now, there was one American doctor who came here, who was a heart specialist, who, hearing that tune, liked it so much, he got it the first time it was recorded. Whoever was singing in the ashram, he recorded it, took the cassette to America, made many copies of it, and distributed among all his heart patients. Told them from today, all your other treatment, pills and therapies, everything stopped. Every day, morning and evening, you just listen to this for half an hour, and it will do the trick. And it did. Afterwards, he wrote here, saying that they are all cured of whatever they were complaining about.
Wonderful.
So that tune of our Ram Nam.
In the way that Papa, which is the one that Papa did, was it has 3 stages to it.
Yes.
Yes, it has a 3. That's the way we sing it in Seattle. And but I've heard so many versions here. I'm glad, and I recorded a few. I'll be
Yes.
glad to take them back because it
Papa's was slightly different. It has been simplified now to a single this tune only. Actually, the way Papa was singing it at the time of his sadhana, that slightly variation is there. As only one who heard it and recorded it was, remembered it was my mother, because she was a small girl at that time, 6 or 7 years old, and the transformation that came over Papa affected her the most, because till the spirit of renunciation caught him, he was mother, father, everything to her. But whatever I heard from her, I could tell. He used to take her to school. He used to join her in all the sports, games, activities, books, reading. And he had a priceless command over English language and literature. He had a whole collection of Shakespeare original in his, of course, with quite a few of which my mother inherited after he left, and we had for many years in our house. Then it all, those old editions, if your paper folds like that, it breaks. That type of Shakespeare, big collection of other books and all that. So all that knowledge of English language he imparted to her, with the result that by the time she was 6 or 7 years old, she could speak English very fluently. She could recite poetry, and before she was 11, she had started composing poetry. And later on, of course, they are all poems in praise of Papa. And in the old issues of the Vision magazine, which I have in the 30s and 40s and even 50s, they carry poems by her. So Papa imparted to her all that thing. And
he did that before his sadhana days.
Before sadhana days. But once the sadhana caught him, then nothing else mattered. It was like a man rushing to catch a train. Nothing will stop him. His anxiety is only to catch the train. Whoever stops him says, "Don't talk now, I'll talk to you later," like that. And actually, some of his brothers got afraid that he might decide to quit. Then they consoled themselves that his strongest attachment, he was not at all attached to his wife, because in fact there was a lot of clashes between them, because he was very modern in his ways. She was extremely orthodox.
Oh, really? I see.
And she believed that their only child should be brought up in a certain manner. He wanted her to be brought up in a free manner, absolutely enjoy the freedom of thought, freedom of action.
So you can see that personality that he
Yes.
had later was still there, wasn't it? I mean, there was some
Yes.
continuity. Just the
And
emotions were gone.
That's right. And so Papa imparted all his ideas, and that when his mind turned towards Ram, towards God, and his sadhana started, there was he has 9 brothers and 3 sisters. They were in all, it's a big family.
I didn't know, yeah.
10 brothers and 3 sisters. Papa was the 5th brother and 6th child. And so they were very much closely attached to each other, all the brothers and sisters.
Yes.
And there was a lot of tension among them that Papa was no longer interested in worldly matters. And all. Then they were all consoling themselves that Papa's strongest attachment was to my mother.
Yeah.
And
most times you'd be right, wouldn't you? You would assume that they would at least wait till the child got
Yes.
older.
So that they used to console themselves. Whatever happens, Papa will never give her up. But a time came, they did not know, because Papa's Ram Nam during the daytime, of course, they would come and see Papa sitting and chanting all the time Ram Nam and all that. And then they would go console themselves, talk for a little while with him and then go. But they didn't know what was happening at night. At night, that must have been the toughest thing for the mother to bear.
Yes.
Papa used to sit in the small room day and night and chant Ram Nam. And he forbade both my mother and grandmother from coming anywhere inside the room or anywhere near the room. To sort of banish them from the room itself. They had no right. But my mother was so much attached to him. It was easy probably for him to, because of his pull towards Ram, he could detach his links with the mother. But he was everything to her.
Yeah.
So she used to tell that at night, she used to sleep with a small hand on the door sill, separating the outside room and the room where he was sitting, so that she would have the feeling that otherwise at night she used to sleep holding his hand. So that hand was no longer there. So at least to have the sensation that his hand is there somewhere inside.
Oh, that's
So she would
so sad.
make like that. And when he finally, my mother and grandmother were called away somewhere to her father's, my great-grandfather's house for some ceremony. That was the time he decided to quit. So when they came back after 2 days, there was no Papa there. They found a letter only. And that letter is published here in the letters of
I
Swami
think
Ram.
I've seen it. Isn't it in the
Yes, there
request of God?
says Papa has given direction to the wife whom he renounced, what she should do and what their daughter should do. And first he addressed her as dear sister. Beloved, you are a sister to me in future and all. The text of the letter is still here. And then
Oh, you mean the physical letter is still here in the ashram?
yes. And you know, as aftermath of this, afterwards, of course, his wife took a long time. And Papa, as a sannyasi, went round and all that. Whenever he used to visit any city where she happened to be living, she would come to meet him. Then she would start her tirade. What is this? You have denounced me. I have become a pauper and an orphan. I have nobody to look up to. You have deserted me and all that. Papa would just laugh it. Papa would tell her, Ramdas has taken refuge at the feet of Ram. You also do the same. Then she said, our daughter has grown up. She has to be married.
What are you going to do?
So, so I don't have a single dime with me. So Papa laughed. Papa said, if you don't have a dime with you, Ramdas doesn't have a copper with him. And she was very much nettled. She says, no, this is you can't avoid your brush aside your responsibility. And Papa just laughed at him. Who is responsible? Only Ram is responsible, not you or I or anybody. He's he who has ordained that Ramdas should take sannyas, and if he ordains that your daughter should marry, she'll also marry.
That's right. Well, you can sympathize with both
within
sides.
a few days
can't you?
after that, one of Papa's elder brothers took on the responsibility. He got a suitable groom for her, and he arranged the marriage. And requested Papa to be in the town at the time of the marriage. But of course, Papa was not going to take part or anything at all. Papa was just a witness. So at the time of the marriage, somebody took Papa to the pendant. Papa was sitting outside in the compound there playing with the children. Papa had become a child himself.
Yes.
Papa was taken because that chap who took him inside was a mischievous fellow. He wanted to test Papa. He asked Papa, who is that couple sitting there, pointing to my mother and father. So Papa laughed and said, Ramdas sees Ram and Sita in them. That was Papa's purified vision.
Yeah.
He saw Ram everywhere. And afterwards, my mother also realized how much change had taken place over him. And she came to look upon him as her guru. Though she continued to call him as Papa. When Mataji came on the scene, she took over everything that my mother was doing. Till then, Papa was called by all the devotees as Swamiji. But when Mataji came on the scene, she became like a child herself. And just as my mother was calling him as Papa, she started calling him as Papa. That's how he became Papa to everyone. In fact, there's one devotee in Kashmir who wrote to my mother also. Says, he's no longer your Papa alone. He has become the Papa of the whole universe.
And he looks like a Papa.
Yes, universe.
It seems to fit him so well. It's funny though that he has that universal love for everyone. You can feel it in everything he does. But this personal love must have been very difficult, because you think this person who is so engaging would have a personal love aspect too. And there's nothing that says a master can't have one. The way God put him together was just unique. I've never read of a saint like him.
It was unique.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of person who personified love itself.
Yes.
He saw a Ram in everybody. Even in the dirtiest, ugliest individual, he would go and hug him and say that you are Ram.
You are wrong,
And they would, because they could make out from his features and all that. Not only at that time the caste system was very much there. And even though he had renounced everything, he was never believer of it. Even in his pre-sannyas days, he never believed in caste, creed and all. But they could make out from his complexion all that he was a Brahmin, that the highest caste in India. And so-called untouchable also, he would go and embrace and all that. He says, no, you should not touch. He says, you are Ram himself. Why should Ramdas touch you? And as a sannyasi, the deeds that he did are simply fantastic. Now we went all over India.
It really is. And to really be able to withstand the pain or not notice the pain too.
He was above everything.
Yeah,
he was not in that lower consciousness at all.
At all, yeah. And the other thing that's so
And
strange.
some of the reminiscences which we hear was from those contemporaries who had met him then. Of course, now there's hardly anybody living. They're all dead and gone.
That's right.
There's one person who came here many years back. He was saying, in 1938, Papa was on a tour. He went to Gujarat. Papa used to travel alone at that time. Of course, the ashram was here and all that. So, in later years, because of Papa's age, and his body needed care, so Mataji started going with him. But at this time, in 1938, Papa used to travel alone with one small bag containing one spare cloth. That's nothing else, just one like this. And he used to go from place and all day, right up to 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, he used to talk, answer questions and all that. I mean, it was a real festive occasion for the devotees. So he came to a city called Surat. Now in Surat, a meeting was arranged on an open ground in front of a school. So Papa was to stand on the veranda, first floor veranda of the school, and address the gathering. This happened in the month of July, the rainiest part of the rainy season. So about half an hour before Papa was to arrive, by then a crowd of about 5,000 people, men, women and children, they had all gathered there. And by the time Papa arrived, at about 5 minutes to 6 or so, it started raining, cats and dogs. They all got thoroughly drenched. But so eager they were to see Papa and to hear him that they never bothered about how much wet they were getting. Then Papa came on the scene. Papa climbed to this eyewitness account I heard from one of those who was at that time 16 or 17 years old. Some years back he came here. He was that time in late 60s or 70s. And he narrated to me this. He said, by the way, Papa came up, stood on that balcony and gave a broad smile at all, and then told them in Hindi, "You have been waiting too long for Ramdas, and you are getting wet also. So Ramdas doesn't want to detain you any longer. So he will make his address to you very brief. He is going to give you something very precious. Cling on to it in all weathers. That is the Ramnam, Mantropadesh. When whatever happens through the generations, keep on chanting it. Pass it on to your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And you may rest assured, nothing dire will happen to you. And you'll be happy and content." And then Papa stood, and with his hands like this, he raised his voice and said, "Oh," like that, like a echo, and the whole audience said, one man responded, "Om," they said. So 3 times Papa repeated Ramnam. That's the initiation.
So he
3
initiated.
times.
That's an, yes, yeah.
5, that is I think the biggest initiation of its kind that Papa did. 5,000 people are initiated at one stretch. And then the one thing that this person was telling me, they noticed was the moment Papa started chanting Ramnam, his whole person was enveloped in some kind of a halo. I don't know whether you believe it or not, but they saw it with their eyes.
With him.
It was like a brilliant halo. And they were just wonderstruck. They were listening to Papa's voice, repeating after him. And then after that Papa had finished, Papa did a big namaskar and told them, "Now you keep on chanting this name, and you will never be in any kind of want in your life. Never in any kind of fear." And Papa wished them goodbye and left. But for half an hour after Papa left, not a person budged from there, even though it was raining, because that afterglow was there, where Papa had stood. And he was saying, "Today also, if you go to that Surat district, you go to the smallest village that go there. In the evening, when you go there in the evening, from any house, any hut you go, you will hear Ramnam chanted, sung. That 5,000 must have become now 5 million. That's how Papa.
Yeah, you think that, I wonder how many people come through Anandashram, and they probably only represent a small percentage of the people who are
Yes.
affected by Papa. I mean, look, in my group's sense.
Some years back, you must have heard of Satya Sai Baba,
Yes.
that famous saint. Some years back I met him in Bombay. And of course he knows everything about everyone who comes to see him. We don't have to introduce. But foolishly we try to introduce ourselves. So this is flickering.
Yes, it just means the battery's going down. When it turns off, that means it's run out of battery.
So I try to introduce myself. I have come from Anandashram and I am a disciple of Swami Ramdas. He cut me short. Do you know what he said? "Who doesn't know you are master? He has made the whole universe dance to Ramna." These are the words of Satya Sai Baba. The finest, only a saint can recognize the true
That's right.
birth of another saint.
And also know the cosmic importance
Yes.
of what's happened. It's one thing to have it happen on the human scale, but to know the depth that it penetrated in the universe. Only
And
saints
we-
would know.
As Mataji used to say, we think that sometimes the devotees of different saints fight among themselves, saying that
Mine is great.
my guru is greater than yours. Mataji used to say this like children fighting with themselves. My mother is more beautiful than yours, or my mother is more intelligent than yours, and all that. But here, it so happens it's one and the same. And this point was proved many years back. There was one devotee in ashram who was afflicted with TB. He was in a very bad shape. He was admitted to a sanatorium. Both his lungs were infected, and the doctors gave up all hope of saving his life. Just as Papa and Mataji happened to be in tour of the district. So they specially broke the journey, visited the sanatorium, and spent 1 hour at his bedside. Papa on one side and Mataji on the other side. And Mataji told Papa, "Papa, now you pour your look of grace on him. Papa just sat there smiling at him. And Mataji, with her hand, she massaged continuously for 1 hour.